Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to another review. And now I'm looking at the Commodore 64 port of the Sega arcade game OutRun. Now, as regular viewers of my channel will know, I've already looked at the conversions for the other two 8-bit computers of the era, the Sinclair ZX Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC. Now, the Spectrum version, it looked okay. It looked pretty good in stills and had detailed graphics, but unfortunately it suffered from a very bad frame rate that dropped considerably in tunnel sections and was generally a little bit on the glitchy side at times, and the CPC version was even worse. And unlike the 128K Spectrum version, that CPC version doesn't even have in-game music, and it has precious little in the way of sound. In fact, the only sound you really heard in that were a dull thud if you actually crashed into something, or very bleepy skidding noise if you were going round corners. It really wasn't a very good port and is arguably the worst 8-bit computer port out there. But now I'm looking at the Commodore 64 version and hoping that it'll be an improvement on those two. There's the dreaded US Gold logo. Amazing Products developed it. I don't think that's the same programmers as for the other two. I think Probe did those other ones, although I could be wrong. But I'd have to look at the videos again to see. You never know. The fact that it's done by different people might actually count in its favour. Just got to wait for it to load. It's okay. Loading screen. I would have preferred if it didn't have the black outlines around them. It makes them look a bit cartoony and I don't know. It just doesn't do anything for me. Yes. When I watched when I watched one of YouTuber's Eustaz's videos about OutRun, I remember him saying that you couldn't actually choose your course. You actually had to. Normally at the end of each stage you see where it forks before going into the next checkpoint. Originally, and in the other two versions I've reviewed, you would actually choose to go either left or right. You can't do that in this. You actually have to select one of those yourself. So you select A, B, C, D or E to determine where you want to end, and then it would preload all 5 sections of the track in that regard. Right, I see. That was a demo mode. So I've selected E for the sake of this review. But what I briefly saw of that demo mode, it looks promising, although I wasn't overly keen on the design of the road. I noticed it had in-game music, which is a big... Oh, I see. It's only got one of the tunes. I see. You can either have the radio off, or you can have either Splash Wave or Magical Sound Shower. I think Passing Breeze was the third one that's in the original version, but that seems to be missing from this. So I'll select Magical Sound Shower. And it tells you what gear you're in. Another jab in the eye for the other two versions I reviewed, where it says either 1 or 2 to the right of the speed. Frame rate's pretty good. Scaling of the other vehicles is a bit choppy. See, look at that. Music's pretty good. Don't think the music's quite as good as it was in the Spectrum version, but at least it's there. So I kind of wish there wasn't just solid lines in the road. It doesn't really give you the feeling that you're moving forward. I mean, yeah, it's got those those grey horizontal lines, but it still doesn't quite convince me. And there's a checkpoint. Shame there's no engine noise. Even though this is better than the Amstrad and Spectrum ports, it's still not great. I don't like the way the roads curve. It's sort of like they're done as sprites, and is really jerkily. It's not. It doesn't smoothly transition into them like it would in, say, the best versions of Chase HQ, or even in the original arcade version of OutRun. Oh goodness. And there are points when you're on a brow of a hill, it looks like the other cars are floating in mid-air for a brief period. Again, that's probably due to the fact that the scaling of the sprites as they come towards you is not exactly a smooth transition. Ugh. Green road. Oh god. Ugh. Susie, what is it with the Commodore 64 and green roads in their car and motorcycle racing games? I remember some green roads in that port of Super Hang-On. God, those vehicles are almost always in just the right place for me to whack into the back of them. And there's no sound at all if you hit them. Or at least it's got a decent skid sound. Well, decent-ish. Ugh. Oh, I ran out of time. No one made it onto the high score table. Oh, it's got that same wave washing sound that I remember from the Spectrum version. Well, Spectrum, the 28K version I reviewed. There was no music at all in the 48K Spectrum version, but it still had the same frame rate issues from what I read. Let's try another one. Let's try. This is showing how far I got. Oh, how close could I have been? I must have been. Okay, let's try A this time. And this time I'm going to try the other tune. That was Magical Sound Shower I did just then, and now I'm going to do whatever the other one was. I can't remember what it's called now. Not Passing Breeze, that's the only one that's missing. Splash Wave, that was it, of course it was. See, the way that cars come towards you is not exactly a smooth transition. So even though it plays a lot better than the other two versions I've reviewed, it does still have some problems preventing it from being as good as it could have been. Oh goodness. Yeah, this seems to be a good rendition of Splash Wave. I kind of wish that US Gold had picked a team like this to do the Spectrum and Amstrad. Well, oh, did you see that? Did you see the girl telling me off in the passenger seat just then when I crashed into that building? and it actually had a crash sound effect, not just a like you got in the Amstrad CPC version. Oh God, that colour really is vomit-inducing. Oh look, a tunnel section, and it's not slowing down to an absolute crawl. Now look at the tunnel section that you saw in my Spectrum, in my review of the Spectrum version. See how slowly that went. Oh, well, there are a lot of occasions where there are lots of cars next to each other and you just can't get past, or either that, or they're very close to each other and you just can't get by. It's almost like they're ganging up on you. The handling of the car's pretty good. I said pretty good. It's still not great. Something about it is still a little off. It's one of those things you... Oh, God. I wish the programmers could have picked some better colour choices for the road. And it would have been nice if they could have had different colour for the actual sides of the road, not the same colour as the rest of it. No. Even though this isn't great, I definitely agree with Zoostaz. This is the best out of the three main 8-bit computer ports. Even though it does have some little niggles, and you can't select you don't have the same freedom of selecting which course you take the way you would normally have done. The whole bug of those two cars were too close to each other. See, that happens so frequently. Oh God, that is horrible. And what? Oh God, I thought I was gonna just miss that car. Nope. See, look, that yellow car in the lane I was in suddenly decided to shoot towards me, so it's in line with that other car to make it a lot more difficult for me to get past. I swear all the other cars are ganging up. See, look, whichever lane you're in, the car, it's almost like the car in front of me is actually, oh, yuck! Is actually stopping. Is actually stopping, so I approach them more quickly until they're in line with another car that's in the adjacent lane. Bastards. Now I've got somewhere between candy floss and diarrhea for the colours in this. Don't you ever whinge at me, Missy? See, look, when you haven't got lines the whole time, like here, it actually looks like you're going for... Stop doing that! Again, that yellow lorry was actually coming towards me faster just because I happened to be in that lane. Oh! Am I going to make it? I might not make it. Oh. And that was the fifth and final stage of that course as well. So that's OutRun for the Commodore 64. While it's not a great port, it's a darn sight better than the Spectrum and Amstrad ports that those respective machines were subjected to. Oh, I'm so close. Oh, how many times did that happen? But it's good it actually has that map screen on. The other two versions didn't. So yeah, graphics bit blocky, and not really enough frames of animation for the vehicles as they come from the horizon towards you. That's a bit jerky, and it ruins the illusion of arcadiness a little, and it reminds you more that you're playing a video game and not actually having the leisurely drive that you're supposed to be having. Frame rate's generally very good. I would have preferred it if there were more stages in which the road didn't have solid lines separating the lanes, like on that last stage I was playing. So it's got that kind of crash in it as well. I didn't know that. Well, that's a good demo mode. Look, guys, you can drive and you can smash into a tree. So yeah, but back to the roundup. And some of the colour choices of the roads are really quite questionable. I mean, not just green, but that one where just a few moments ago when it had a mixture of pink and brown. Blech. That was really horrific. It would have also been nice if the grass either side of the road could have been a different colour, not the same colour as the road. I had exactly the same problem with WEC Le Mans with the Commodore 64. Although this game was darn sight more fun to play than that, even though it does have the same issues with the other the CPU controlled drivers clearly ganging up on you. I kind of wish it wouldn't do that because it, or the very least, didn't make it quite so obvious. I just noticed that car steering in both directions. I didn't see the famous Ferrari logo switching directions like is often the case in other ports of the. Yeah, so graphics are generally okay. A little bit too cartoony and a bit blocky, but. But I guess it could have been a lot worse. Sound, well, you've got two of the three tunes from the original arcade version. Actually, I'm going to try something. I'm just going to quickly start and see what it's like with no music on, see if there are any sound effects, and then I'll be able to properly do an analysis of the sound. I mean, I heard some sound in like skids and crashing into things, but I want to hear what it's like with no music at all. I'm not going to actually play, but well, I'll sort of play and talk at the same time. Well, that's not a bad sound. Skid sounds are bearable. I think they could have been a bit better than this, though. That's a fairly tidy engine noise. I mean, we have to remember these are still 8-bit. The Commodore 64 is still an 8-bit machine, so there was still some limits as to what it could do sound-wise. And gameplay. Well, as you can see, this has a much better frame rate than the Amstrad and Spectrum versions did. Those should have been like this, but because of poor sloppy programming and perhaps they were not nearly as smooth and fast as they could and should have been. And I don't like the fact that when you're in a particular lane, if there's a car in front of you, it seems to come towards you and deliberately line itself up with other cars that happen to be in adjacent lanes to you to make it nigh on impossible to get past them without taking a knock. that seemed to be happening rather too often to be a coincidence, and I kind of wish it dialed that back a little, particularly in the opening stages when it should be a little bit easier to get you in the mood and prepare you for harder stuff later on. I also don't I'm not also not a huge fan of the way the road is animated. I mean, not only does that sort of horizontal striping effect the look a bit odd when you've got the solid white lines, as was most often the case. It didn't look particularly convincing, and the actual road itself, it was almost like it was done as sprites, and as a result, you didn't get gradually curving roads the way you would if it were the real deal, and it just made the animation of roads curving look very jerky. I mean, I don't know whether that's a compromise they made to stop it from having the same speed and frame rate issues that plagued the Spectrum and Amstrad versions, but surely it must have been possible to do. See, look, it's literally just like the road sprite is just being shifted left and right. It doesn't even adjust itself properly with perspective the way it does on other versions. So that is a bit of a shame. But otherwise, gameplay wise, it's pretty good. It is a shame that one of the three tunes from the original arcade is missing. There's no Passing Breeze in this version, and it is a shame that you don't get to choose your course on the fly. You have to just pick one of the 5 predetermined ones, and you're constrained to that. But even though this version has its faults, I'd still, if you're after an 8-bit computer version, this is the version that you'd ideally go for, and steer clear of the Spectrum and Amstrad versions, especially the Amstrad version. So I'm going to give OutRun for the Commodore 64 7 out of 10. So hope you enjoyed that review. Catch you on another video soon. Texie88 out.